I'm Dave Hall, and today I will be talking about Drupal from caterpillar to butterfly, if my clicker will work. There we go. People say to make a good presentation, you need to tell a story. So I'm going to tell you a story, the story of Te Anohei Tino Hayakai. Sorry if I butchered that.
Te anu e tino ia kai, nā Eric Carle. I te pō atarau, e tauana, he hua iti i runga i tētai rau. I te ata o te rātapu, ka witi mai te rā. Ana nā, ka puta mai he anu e iti rawa. He anu e tino hia kai oki. Ka uri ia ki te rapu kai mana. I te mane, ka kai ia mā roto rawa i tētai āporo, engari i te ia kai tonu ia. I te tūrei, ka kai ia mā roto i ngā pea e rua, engari i te ia kai tonu ia. I te wenerei, ka kai ia mā roto rawa i ngā paramu e toru. Engari, i te ia kai tonu ia. I te teite, ka kai ia mā roto i ngā rōpere e pā. Engari, i te ia kai tonu ia. I te paraire, ka kai ia mā roto i ngā arani e rima. Engari, i te ia kai tonu ia. I te rā oroi, ka kai ia mā roto rawa i tētai keke tiakarete, i tētai aikarimi, i tētai ūkini, i tētai tii, i tētai pōkai arami, i tētai rarepapa, i tētai pai tieri, i tētai tōtiti, i tētai keke kapu, i tētai merengi hoki, i taua pō, kua mamai tōna puku, mamai tonu, titiro ki tāna kano e. Ko te rā o muri mai, ko te rā tapu. Ka kai te anu e nei, mā roto rawa i tētai rau ka kāriki. Rau reka oki, nā wai, a ka tau tōna puku, ka piki te ora. Ka pai anu e. Kua ngata tana ia kai. E ara ia i te anu e iti, kua tipu ia ai anu e nui, ai anu e momona oki. Ka uri ia ki te anga ware a uru mōna. Ka noo aumaru ia ki roto. Tā e, rua, toru ngā wiki. Ka kai paku ia i tētai puare, ka pana, ka puta. E pūrere ua tino a tā ua. A tā ua, tino pūrere ua. Kua Mutu.
And my clicker stopped working again. So, Nam Mi Hai. I'll actually stop butchering Maori now, but that's why I used a video rather than me reading the story. But what I will do now is tell you the story of Drupal and the caterpillar in English. And this story is how Drupal has become the very hungry caterpillar and how it needs to be transformed to remain relevant to the modern web. So the web's changed a lot over the last 17 years, and it's time for Drupal to change too. And let's look at this through the very hungry caterpillar. So in the light of a dorm room window, a little website lay upon a server. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up, and pop, out of the website came a tiny and very hungry CMS. He started to look for some use cases. On Monday, he ate through one political campaign, but he was still hungry. On Tuesday, he ate through 2 news sites, but he was still hungry. On Wednesday, he ate through 3 developer portals, but he was still hungry. On Thursday, he ate through 4 government agencies, and that's a lot to eat, but he was still hungry. On Friday, he ate through 5 enterprises, but he was still hungry. So on Saturday, he ate through views, date, CK editor, entity reference, link, email, telephone, UUID, workbench moderation, and media. And that night, he had a stomachache. See, little Drupal doesn't look so happy now. The next day was Sunday again. The CMS ate through 1 nice green leaf, and after that, he felt much better. Maybe the leaf is the Drupal 8 core initiatives. Now, he wasn't hungry anymore, and he wasn't a little CMS anymore. He was a big, fat CMS. He built a small house called a cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks, and then he nibbled a hole in the cocoon and pushed his way out. He was a beautiful butterfly. Today, I'm going to talk about what Drupal needs to do to become this butterfly. And why a butterfly? Because they're agile and beautiful. And I also love Eric Carl's drawings. His museum and online store runs Drupal 7, as I discovered earlier this year. Now, this isn't a small core talk. We've moved on from the days of small core. Back then, people wanted Drupal to be a web application framework. Instead, we stole a web application framework, being Symfony, and built Drupal 8 on top of that. And I think history has shown that that was the right decision. But also, Drupal is not a general purpose web application framework, and we shouldn't try to make it one. If you want that, go use Laravel or Symfony if you want it PHP based. So what is Drupal? Is it Drupal core? Is it Drupal.org? Is it the community? We need to define what Drupal is. And to do that, we need to start thinking about the use cases that Drupal excels at. We shouldn't try to make Drupal fit every project. It's not a golden hammer. We need to focus on what Drupal is good at. For this presentation, I'm generally talking about Drupal core, but other bits of Drupal are relevant as well. There's too many things in core today that don't serve the 80% use case. During the Drupal 8 development cycle, we ditched a bunch of modules. And this was a good decision. And none of the modules that were ditched from the transition from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 are a top 50 module in Contrib. So I think that tells us a lot about dropping modules. But I don't think we went far enough. Do we need a contact form in core? Having a solid SMTP library, I think, makes sense, but it isn't really Drupal's job to fill people's inboxes with spam. Hang on. What about book? Hands up, who's ever used book module in a site? Okay, how many of you have done that for 7 or 8? Okay, keep your hand up if it's a Drupal 8 site that's running in production today using book. Okay, that's what I was expecting. So why do we still have it in core? I'd argue we don't need it. And for most users, Google Analytics has killed the statistics module. I'm sorry, Tim Millwood, but that's the reality. Now, I could go on and spend the rest of my time critiquing all of the modules in Drupal core and suggesting if I think they should be in or out. But I think I've already offended enough core system maintainers, so I'll stop at this point. But I think as a community, it's really important for us to review what is actually in Drupal core and perform a critical evaluation. And I'm going to argue also that Drupal needs to be decoupled. And I'm not talking that type of decoupled. I think we need 2 parts or 2 layers. The foundation should be what we call Drupal core today, but it should be a slimmed down version of core. It should be a framework, but not this type of framework. The framework should be the foundation for building content-centric applications. The very core of the framework must be content management, editor-focused content management, not content delivery. Today, Drupal spends most of its time focused on content delivery, and it leaves the editors with a substandard user experience. I'd also argue that out of the box, that the framework shouldn't be very useful by itself, which is similar to Drupal core as we know it today. Core needs to become smaller and leaner, but not small core. So let's look at what the framework could contain. There'd be the core entities that people expect from Drupal. So we'll have users, we'll have taxonomy, we'll have comments, we'll have nodes. We can't really have Drupal without nodes. We also need a sweet admin UI. Today, everyone talks about how great the WordPress admin UI is and content editor experience in WordPress. How about we get people talking about the Drupal admin user experience the same way? Now, there's a lot of talk at the moment about should Drupal retain server-side rendering for and stuff like that. I'm really torn on this. Every couple of weeks, I read some more, talk to some more people, and I get really torn on should server-side rendering remain part of Drupal core. This week, I'm actually going to sit on the fence because I've been far too busy to catch up on the latest over the last few weeks. But I think that this is a really important conversation for the community about if we do remove server-side rendering or if the admin UI does go down the road of being truly decoupled. The other thing is that out of the box, Drupal core HTML rendering gives us a lot. We get RDFA, we get a lot of accessibility stuff. So we need to make sure that we're not just providing an API that vomits out JSON and then people are left to kind of cobble together a React front end or a Vue front end, or if you really want to, Angular or whatever. But also, if we keep the server-side rendering in Drupal core, it means that developers won't necessarily be thinking API first when they're creating their modules. So this is a bit of a challenge. But I'd also argue that a lot of the admin config UI can actually be done away with. Like most of this stuff, I don't think most of our users actually need. Even a competent site builder shouldn't need most of this. Like, for example, a content editor shouldn't need to know about clearing the cache. Drupal 8 has cache tags and a whole bunch of stuff in there that means Drupal can be very smart about clearing caches. If there's times where Drupal isn't clearing the cache when a cache clear should occur, then I'd argue that's a bug that needs to be fixed. Developers and site builders can deal with clearing the cache, but we've got command line tools for that. We don't need a button like the clear cache button in core. And I also think we need to provide better workflows. I'm a bit biased in this regard. I am part of the Workflow Core Initiative. But I think we need a solid toolkit for building advanced workflows for content, published and unpublished in 2017 for a node just doesn't really cut it. And in 8.4, the workflow module was marked as stable. So Drupal is heading in this direction. You can tell by this slide, I'm not a designer or a front-end person, and the slide's probably already out of date. Half of these tools are probably considered like old hat now, and there's new ones to replace them. But 10 years ago, you could get away with hand coding CSS and JavaScript. Today, a competent front-end developer needs a bunch of tools. So why shouldn't it be any different for a site builder? I think we should be giving them more tools and more power and less UI. Most of the configuration that we see here shouldn't be changed on a live site. Like, people shouldn't be going in and making configuration changes for like the site title or things like that on a live site. So why do we give them the UI and encourage bad habits? If we get rid of the UI, then people can't make those changes. And Drupal core comes with the YAML files and the schemas, so we know what those files are meant to look like. I'm not going to suggest that someone can just bust out a YAML file and create advanced views. But I do think that for a lot of use cases, people should be able to craft the YAML files. And Contrib can provide UIs for things like views and stuff like that where people do need a UI. So there we have it, our new look Drupal framework, our first butterfly. A framework for building amazing content management applications that put editors front and center. Now, clients, agencies, in-house teams, freelancers, they're going to see our framework butterfly as the parent of their caterpillar. They'll go through a journey of eating a bunch of Contrib modules. They'll probably eat too many. But then they get the client feedback and the QA, and eventually a beautiful butterfly, sorry, I mean a web application will emerge. How do we make it easier for people to get to the butterfly stage? Wouldn't it be great if we could let people start with a cocoon rather than a very hungry caterpillar? Overall, Drupal distros have been a bit of a failure. It's relatively easy to ship version 1.0. You build a site, export the features, strip out a few things that are client-specific and throw it up on Drupal.org or GitHub these days, and you call it a Drupal distro. Now the real work begins. People find bugs. Their use case is different to the original use case. You have to keep all the contrib modules up to date. On the whole, the Drupal community won't fund the maintenance of distros. So the distros end up not getting the love they deserve, and so that provides a bad experience for the users, but also for the people who build the distros. So I think successfully monetizing distros is an important consideration. And if we're honest, most people take a distro and hack it anyway. We should accept that this is the primary use case. Instead of calling them distros, we should start referring to them as puppies or starter kits. Once you take the puppy home, it becomes your responsibility. The starter kit provides a foundation for building a new site for a particular use case, but you fork the starter kit and build your site with it. There should be no expectation of an upgrade path or ongoing support. So in terms of implementation, it would be composer create project URL to the starter kit. And from that point, you've forked it. You're now responsible for maintaining, keeping the modules up to date. And there is no pound, so it's yours for life. Now, a great example of this starter kit approach is Contenta, which is a decoupled Drupal project. How many people here have checked out Contenta? Okay. Hopefully, if I ask that question next week, a few more hands will go up as a result of my session. But not only do they provide a backend, they provide a whole bunch of example implementations with popular front-end frameworks like Vue and React and things like that. And they're adding more all the time. Now, if we go down this road of a starter kit, we also need a showcase for Drupal. And our framework won't do that. And one challenge for the community will be to build a showcase distro or a starter kit that replaces today's Drupal core, the broader Drupal core. Someone should be able to take this and with a minimal amount of effort end up with a production-ready site in an afternoon. Now, it's not going to be fantastic. It's not going to be like ready for enterprise clients, but if someone wants to just grab this starter kit, throw it together and go, this is what Drupal can do, then I think that's the use case we should be targeting. And it also helps to keep Drupal affordable for smaller businesses and not-for-profits. And it also means that if you need to put together a demo for a larger organization, it's quite easy to do as well. So as much as I like the out-of-box initiative, I don't think it's ambitious enough. To me, it feels like it's showcasing how Drupal can be like WordPress. We should be showcasing the power of Drupal, not how Drupal can be like WordPress. So I think something like Acquia's Lightning is a good foundation for our showcase distro. Out of the box, it demonstrates the power of Drupal. Now, I'm sure afterwards we could all have a really good argument about their module selection and things like that, but as a starting point, I think it's a good place to start. And there'll also still be a place for true distros. These will take Drupal the framework and provide solutions for targeted use cases. Not all of these need to be publicly available. Large companies are building in-house starter kits and distro products today. And some agencies are turning their base distros into in-house starter kits as well. I've spoken to several agencies over the last few months about how they're doing this. And I expect this to continue and accelerate in 2018. But the generic Drupal SaaS products like Drupal Gardens, or for those of you who have been around longer, Buzzer, they never really took off. But this time, I think things are different. We're starting to see a new wave of Drupal-based SaaS products out there. They're hosted Drupal platforms that target specific use cases. Some examples are OpenSocial, Electronomo, Roomify, even the Australian government's GovCMS, I would argue, is in this category. And as a community, we need to make it easier for these businesses to embrace open SaaS. The success of the business isn't determined by the code, and the companies shouldn't be afraid to share. You can collaborate without giving away your secret recipe. We need to find ways to foster collaboration and knowledge between different groups and users. Speaking of sharing, a few months ago, we saw the Amazing team open source their platform. Michael's here for DrupalSouth, which is great to see, and he's been talking a lot about Lagoon. And I think it was a very brave move. And when they open sourced it, this quote was part of the blog post. And Michael said, "We're not worried about releasing this code. What separates us from other hosting companies is not our deployment systems or service configurations, but rather the strength of our team and our client support." And I think that that's a really important distinction. And when people are building open SaaS products, this stuff is what makes a difference, in my opinion. Over the last decade, we've seen the rise of cloud hosting. But if we really want to be honest, it's just all of the Drupal hosting platforms are just adding an opinionated workflow and a few tools on top of some web servers. And all of these hosting services are built on top of existing cloud platforms. So, you know, there is a bit of work there, but it's not rocket surgery. And I also think it's a real sign that it's time for Drupal to embrace the cloud. We need to become cloud native. Not everyone will host in the cloud, but even users on DreamHost or an old desktop PC under someone's desk will benefit from a cloud-first approach. And what do I mean by cloud native? So this is from the mission statement for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The Foundation's mission is to create and drive the adoption of new computing paradigms that is optimized for modern distributed system environments capable of scaling to tens of thousands of self-healing, multi-tenanted nodes. I think we need a webinar to learn more about this. But the cloud native applications build on the 12-factor application idea popularized by Heroku. And today, Drupal is about a 9-factor application. But the idea is that your services can go away and be more fault tolerant. So it should be easy to run Drupal as a cloud native application. And this gets back to the hosting platform. Running Drupal in a container should be easier than running it under XAMPP. Today, this isn't the case. Things are improving in this area, and once everything is containerized, it should be easy to build environments and throw them away. We need to assume that things will fail. Drupal needs to be prepared for failures and handle them gracefully. We can't assume that other services will have 100% uptime because no one's got unlimited budgets. We also need to accept that the days of a website being served by a single application are waning. Today, Drupal needs to exist in a broader landscape. So around the late noughties, early 2010s, there was a bunch of consolidation in the web space. We started to go from handcrafted or artisanal HTML, as I like to call it, and custom-built CMSs to standardized platforms. Sites started migrating to platforms such as WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, Autonomy Team Site, and whatever Adobe's calling their stuff this month. So Drupal has ridden that wave. But today we're starting to see that change. And I don't think we're going back to hipster HTML. But what I'm seeing is Drupal coexisting with other tools. The platform is no longer one piece of software. There's a collection of tools in an ecosystem. And in any ecosystem, there are friends and foes. Some tools will be complementary to Drupal, while some will be predators. As professionals, we have to be conscious of this and learn how to identify the predators. We should leave the flies and mosquitoes, or as they're more commonly referred to, the WordPress and static site generators. There are some use cases that Drupal isn't good for and probably will never be good for. Why compromise our mission in order to do something else badly? We should accept that we can leave those bits of the market. But what we should be concerned about is the proprietary platforms. Be they more traditional things like Adobe Suite or Sitecore, which I like to think of as dragonflies. Drupal's been very effective at outmaneuvering the dragonflies. But don't forget, dragonflies eat butterflies. Recently, we've seen the rise of the crickets. These are content as a service or headless CMS products. They're making a lot of noise, but it's hard to find good solutions in this space. Most of them are proprietary products and delivered as a SaaS, via a SaaS business model. They also have really slick marketing. And the quick start guides are quick. Now, I haven't had this for a while, but there was a period of time where I was getting this ad in my Twitter stream 2 or 3 times a day from Contentful. I'm glad they spent so much money trying to target me with that ad. And, you know, WordPress has its famous 5-minute install. Now, I know I said we shouldn't care about the flies, but it doesn't mean that we can't learn something from them. WordPress can be installed in 5 minutes, whereas with Drupal, Composer takes at least 5 minutes to figure out what dependencies it needs to download. So let's have a look at the Try Drupal program, which I think is great, but it's not so smooth. So I get to Drupal.org. Now, let's see if my pointer's going to... Yeah, cool. All right, so I get to Drupal.org. I hit Try Drupal. Then I land on this page. Now, I want to try Drupal. So I think I'll go with Pantheon because Acquia wants me to build something, whereas I just want to try. Okay, now I have to sign up. I thought I was just trying Drupal. So I'll fill in this form, and there's more stuff down below to fill in. And then I get this. Create a new site or migrate an existing one. I'm still not getting to try Drupal. Okay, so let's create a new site, but then I need to think of a name. And then why is WordPress on the top of this list? I just want to try Drupal. Okay, so I've selected Drupal 8. And then I go off and make a cup of tea, and I still don't see anything that says try Drupal. I get to visit my Pantheon site dashboard. So how do I get to my site? Well, I'll kind of look around a bit, and eventually I'll click on visit my development site. Now I'm going to get to try Drupal. No. Now I have to pick a language. Okay, Drupal is really feeling like a lot of work. Like, if I'm a CMO who's heard about Drupal, I reckon I would have already given up. But I'm persistent, so I'll select English, and then I have to provide all this information, but I already gave my email address and stuff earlier, and I need to come up with a new password, and Drupal's telling me that my password's weak. So it's not a great user experience, and then I've got even more stuff I have to fill in. Okay, so I've done all that. Save and continue. And now I think I deserve some congratulations because I've actually got to try Drupal. But I have no idea what to do next. I'm just dumped here. Now let's have a quick look at Contentful. The try offering is a little less prominent, but it's still there. Okay, again, I have to sign up, but look at how short this sign-up form is. And if I've got access to GitHub, or if my organization's using Google Apps or whatever, I can just hit a button. And then I wait about 30 seconds for this to run, which is about as much time as I need to read this marketing info about how great the platform is. And then I'm done. I get dumped here. There's a nice little hand waving at me going, hey, do you want me to walk you through what you've got to do next? And so I'm guided through this process. I think this is the type of experience people expect when they want to try Drupal. And we should remember that big fat Drupal would make a tasty meal. We need to transform if we are to survive. Let's make Drupal a content backend as a service that editors love. Let's make Drupal a beautiful part of the modern web. Kia ora, rawa atu. And special thanks to Eric Carl for all of his wonderful artwork that I stole. Joseph Toth, who did the Drupalized caterpillars, and everyone who's helped make Drupal awesome, even though I may have slagged off some of your work today. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the few minutes we've got left. Thanks. Oh, here we go.
Ah, come on. You were expecting this. Yeah, what's your opinion on the state of Composer in core at the moment? Like there's a big issue, obviously, about how a lot of users in the community aren't liking Composer, which is putting a hold on a lot of that framework concept. What's your take on it?
So let me try to be diplomatic here, and being diplomatic's not one of my strong points. I think that we've seen front-end stuff evolve from you just hack it all together and you throw jQuery in a folder and, hey, I'm doing front-end stuff, to having NPM and having a whole bunch of tooling for developing modern front-ends. And I think that Drupal is behind the curve in adopting that more modern tooling for the development of the Drupal backend. I think that Composer itself does have some constraints around the lack of good caching and things like that. But I think that requires the Drupal community to work more closely with the Composer community to resolve some of those things. I know in the past there have been people suggesting that Drupal should rewrite Composer or write our own package management system.
Yeah.
We don't need more
Packaging Drupal
Drupalisms.
as a FAR.
Sorry?
Packaging Drupal as a FAR, like a PHP archive.
Yeah,
Delivering.
like there's a whole bunch of ways things can be done. Some are more crazy than others. So,
Sorry, just one last one. Have you used Helm to deploy Drupal before?
I have looked at doing it. I haven't actually done it. Okay, cool. Yep. Cool. Yep. Thanks, everyone.